Hello, I'm David Hunt and welcome to The Art Hunter. My interview today, you can see it around, is with a visual artist with detail that's the key of his motivation, and it's all set up by a bit of travelling that he's done in his life. Travelling to Sicily and Italy, of course we all do that, visiting Rome, Florence, Venice, Paris, London, New York, Tokyo, and then all of a sudden he thought, I should be sketching this, I should be recording this. Instead of taking a photo, let's record it and sketch. That's if we can draw. And drawing with a pen and ink only, and he's achieved the most amazing stuff. Then during COVID, because he couldn't go anywhere else, he looked back into his own city of Melbourne, and boy, what wonderful architecture we've got here. So about bloody time that he realised that he should be doing it here. And the detail is outstanding. And of course I'm a bit biased with it being in Melbourne. But when I first looked at his art, I thought to myself, am I looking at prints? Is this a print that I'm seeing? But no, it's not a print. As I said, it's all pen and ink. Let's meet him. Paul, hello.
Hey, David.
So congratulations on your art. When did you realise that you were that good at art?
It's a strange thing, but I took over the blackboards when I was in primary school and used to spend lunchtimes illustrating around the corners of the blackboards.
Whoa.
I was the go-to guy, in a Catholic junior school.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I was doing religious things around corners, and then all of a sudden it was Disneyland, and I was doing all sorts of characters.
Fantastic.
So drawing was my go-to. Subjects on other things like English and mathematics, forget it.
Yeah. So you just always knew that you probably were going to be an artist of some degree as time went on. So did you go to art school when you left?
Yeah, I was blessed really in a way, because the Catholic college had no creative subjects at all.
Yep.
And my family was a large family. There was 4 boys, a couple of girls. So everyone was going to Catholic school. Mum took me out, I was the only one, recommended by a teacher at the junior school to go say, this boy's not designed for this. And they put me into the local technical school.
Okay.
So out of that, I had subjects like drafting, mechanical drawing, all the fine arts, you can play with clay. So all of a sudden I went from no creative subjects to full on for 5 years. And then after I left that technical school, I went to Paran, Institute of Technology, they called it at the time.
And so many famous artists came out of there, didn't they?
Quite a few. It was in its 2nd year of operation in the new building in High Street, and they brought in, Paul Cox was sitting there teaching me how to take a photograph.
Yeah.
We had people in there that were well known, that's why they chose it, to do it, and gave the students a chance. Like All Australian Graffiti came out of that world. Mimo and Con, all those 1 year ahead of me.
Yeah, wow.
So I got this, again, a bubble of all sorts of creative people. And yes, it was quite successful. Swinburne wasn't on the map then.
Yep.
It became,
Swinburne
I think,
later.
a bit of a
or much
model
later.
Much
later.
It was 80s type of thing.
So you went off into the advertising world.
Accidentally.
Accidentally.
Again, I had 3-4 part-time jobs just to get me into art school and work. So I was working more than studying.
And playing up a lot, because it was legendary, wasn't it?
There was a little bit going on there. We had Daddy Cool playing down the corner. We had, we had films being created by the teachers, and they were pretty wild and woolly back in the late 60s and the 70s. 69, yeah.
It would have been a great time to be part of the art collective, per se.
It certainly was. You're 18, 19, and all of a sudden there's girls there, and there was party time.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like they brought their couches in and put them in this modern building from home, like we were sitting around, everyone was... it was pretty party time. but it was good, you know, like it changed how I thought about things. But anyway, the teacher, Tony Ward, Tony was one of the good graphic designers there. Tony said, you better go and look up on the notice board in the hall there, Paul, because you really should go get yourself a job.
Right.
Because I was in my third year, not going anywhere. So I ended up pulling one off, and it was for a judoscope operator.
A what?
A judoscope operator.
Judoscope.
Which was a form of taking bromites and prints. It was the changeover really from headline typographical work.
Okay.
So they do headlines in print.
Right.
And they had a little setup, chemicals, all that. So I went down there in the dungeon of this advertising agency and worked for 6 months, taking all the work up to the creative department. And then when the job came up for a junior art director, I said, I can do that. I held back my folio until that moment, and then I pulled it out. They knew me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that was my first art director's job in advertising.
And that would have happened a bit back then. It would have been you didn't have to have the degrees behind you.
Didn't even know what advertising was for
Yeah.
graphic designers and communication people. You know, the copywriters were ex-journos. You know, the art people were illustrators or from fine arts world or photographic world, or they were teachers.
Yep.
So the graphic department, visual departments just started to form.
And again, it would have been fairly outrageous times in those advertising agencies.
Yeah, I was playing National League sort of basketball at the time, and sport was my go-to away from the office. And so Fridays I would never be drinking because I was dealing with kids.
Right.
You know, basketball kids and teams. And so on Friday I was the driver.
Hey.
So, yeah, I used to get them down to Lygon Street, send them down to Jamaica House or wherever it was they were going, and their work was done for the day.
Yeah.
Like most of them finished their work by 9.
Yeah.
They were done for the day. So the fact was by 5, 6 o'clock, Jimmy Watson was the next go-to, and they were all looking for a lift home. They all went off in all sorts of directions.
I'm sure they would have.
Advertising lunches were notorious.
Yeah.
It was wild times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did the, you know, like obviously you were doing art at advertising agencies, but when did you think to yourself, I want to do this for myself, and why pen and ink?
I think again, I in travelling, and my first sort of trip away to Europe, I sort of equipped myself with literally a sketchbook and a journal and some paper. Actually, and I also had just a little block of watercolour paper that was a block, you know, so I'd draw on that, rip it off and file it away. So it started really, again, with that. The sketchbook started with that journaling of that first trip. And ever since then, I sort of went travelling. I'd sit still somewhere to draw. And that went on for, you know, the whole week. I'd probably do 6 or 7 drawings. And it's about sitting still and looking at what your surrounds are about. You know, that's how I saw it.
Yeah.
And it was a way, it took my brain away from advertising and all the pressure of that business.
Yeah.
But so that continued.
But what about if you're in, you know, like Rome or Venice or you know, wouldn't you be wanting to run out and look at the sites, or were you wanted to document the sites?
Yes, it is a balance. Like I sort of burnt some of the earlier trips by probably going on too many side trips.
Yep.
Not knowing if I was ever going to get back to that place. But I'm sort of, from those early days or early years, I sort of went, no, you've got to go back. You know, so going back was the time when I could sit, say, in Piazza Navona with my back to a church, looking at the crowd, sketching the early morning scenes, and then, you know, sit there literally with a coffee and wait and listen to the sounds and the change of light in the square and just keep drawing. And that was a day, you know.
And would people come up and talk to you about what you're doing?
There's always people looking over your shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Do you like that? Or was it annoying?
I don't mind it. I think it's actually... you have a bit of a smile When I was in India, I was sitting in Mysore sketching the palace on a bit of lawn, thinking I'm by myself. And the gates closed to most people, but then all of a sudden I had someone tap me on the shoulder from behind because I was focused. And this little boy offered me some peanuts, and I went, oh. And I sort of looked, and then I looked around, and there was about 3 families sitting on the lawn behind me, watching me sketch.
Wow.
So that is, they love it. You know, like they love to see someone,
Yeah.
you know, applying their craft or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And so, yeah, that's, people are always looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. So you weren't taking photographs so much.
No.
You're doing the sketches.
Yeah.
Now, the couch has never usually got anything on it next to the person, the props today, because I said the backpack's going to go, and you went, no, that's part of the props. So a backpack?
Yeah, because, you know, you have to have the gear to travel with. So
of course.
The sketchbooks, and usually if there's a travel guide book in there, you'll find, or maybe a translation book in there, and of course the trusty fountain pens. So it's simple in a way, you know, like, but you need to have your backpack with you if you're travelling.
Yeah.
And if you're an urban sketcher, that's a go-to.
Yeah.
So.
Now, you said your fountain pen. You know, like there's an old school word I haven't heard for a while. Is that what you still use? You know?
Yeah, I sort of started, you know, because of advertising, we had pen and ink we were using a lot, and they were a rotary product. And some had they call it a signature pen, and it had a proper nib that you would have on a fountain pen. The others were pointy, and they used to draw very fine lines. So I started there, and then I discovered, you know, a German fountain pen that was affordable, and I could travel with it. And in the end, I said, oh, I'll have a green one for Bali because it's in the jungle. I'll have a grey one for Italy because you've got to be stylish. You know, so yeah, It was a matter of affordable, but it had a cartridge, and I could just change out quickly and take my little pack with me, and I'm up and running. So, yeah.
So with those sketches, and you've got some of the smaller sketchbooks next to you. Would that be that top green one? Is that the Bali one?
No,
no. I was joking.
Yeah, there. I know that. This one, you're right. The green ones, the green one's from a company called Greenwood, and I love their paper. So I'm going to put a bit of a word in for them. But this is more of my journal. So I call it Theory.
Yeah.
It's got a little thing on. We're going to do this later, I think, but Theory, and I keep all my notes in there and my little sketches and things like that, and probably plans, other ideas. So it's a small one, but the Bali one, yeah, it's interesting. The Bali one, I started, you know, drawing. This is just an A3 sketchbook, and I'll draw, and then I'll go back to the room. You know, it's raining outside, and you know, and I'd have my rice in front of me, and I'll just keep sketching on the marble top table, the Dutch-looking hotel room. So I started doing these, and you know, they spread out over pages, and you know,
Paul,
as you can see.
How long would one of those, like that one there with the elephant?
Yeah, the Ganesha was opposite the hotel, and I've drawn this one a few times. It's a big stone statue. And I sort of went, right, okay, I'm sketching, and, you know, I must have the rat down the bottom, you know, and I'm sort of get all the shapes in there. And then I usually look at the light of how it sits there. Sometimes I might take a photograph, and then I'll take that back with me to what I call the kitchen table stuff. And that means all that line work and that extra line work you see in there is usually done on the kitchen table.
Right, okay, so, you're not doing that outside.
I'm not doing that on location.
Yeah.
Most of the fill-in after the drawing is done.
Yeah, because that was my question.
Quickly, though, you don't want to lose
the memory of
your memory of where the light is. So you usually try and do it the same night.
Yeah, wow.
So just...
So what's your fascination with architecture and sculpture?
I think the architecture is interesting. Like I was unpacking Mum and Dad's house, and there were 2 drawings on the wall of mine that go back when I was 18, and there were 2 scenes of one was a train station out in Queensland, which my mum brought back as a photograph, and I drew it. And then there was another scene too in a country town, veranda all the way around, and I drew that. They were on the wall at 19, you know, at home. And so I know I've always been interested in drawing architecture, and I think because of perspective and the way it works, it's just, to me, it doesn't move. So it's not live drawing. It's sitting there. I don't have to do it. I can count windows. I can count doorways. You know, I can work out by this subject that doesn't move. And it started there. But the first trip I did to Sicily, just as it would, kid coming out of art school, went through art history, didn't understand a damn thing, goes on the trip, and all of a sudden it's all relevant, and you're looking at this town for the first time, and then they give you the story. So they go, right, okay, in 1693 we had an earthquake and Etna took off and it destroyed half of Sicily. And so we rebuilt it. And why did we rebuild it at that time? Because the people needed to live somewhere because they would demolish these buildings. So we built it in a Baroque style of the time. Here all of a sudden is this fascination for me in this Baroque architecture that I walked into this village and discovered weren't old, compared with, you know, the 300-year BC temple that's sitting next to it. These aren't old, but they are just magnificent in trying to bring things back to life again after all that disaster. And that was the story. And I started there, really, in that first trip of understanding that, and I've been back since. 2011, I spent nearly 6 weeks there drawing and going back to those places. That's what we talked about. Go back, sit down, do a bit more history lesson, really.
And you're like, it's so much history. And you're like, and the fact is that you would have been taught it at art school, but you didn't take it in. You were at the wrong age.
Step out.
And the fact is that you refound it by going back and wanting to know about it, which is great. But why pen and ink? What was it? Because it's fairly easy, and the fact that you can do it in a sketchbook.
And when I was in in my advertising career, I was doing a lot of storyboarding because you do, as an art director, you did your own drawings. I used to sort of quickly grab, what they were, the fine line pens, and start drawing my storyboards in almost the same style.
Now tell people what a storyboard is for those that they not know.
Okay, so advertising.
But film, they did a lot.
The film part of advertising was quite interesting, just like the art school. All of a sudden, I'm working in this business with these, what I thought were older people. They were probably 2 years older than me. And we were writing scripts and doing these. TV was new. Advertising TV was new. So all of a sudden, we were introduced to these film companies. And here's one with Peter Weir, Beresford, Skepsis that working there, doing ads. So we were doing ads with these people.
Film people.
And what we, as a junior art director or as an art director, you would be doing the visual drawing of the moving image.
Yep. So it would be a block. It would be a block. That would be one 20, section of
probably
it.
Squares.
Yep.
They designed, they used to design TV pads for it with little empty blocks. I always drew my own on a piece of paper.
Yeah. But it's fascinating when you see it. Well, the band Aha, Take On Me, that great song from the 80s, and it's sort of comic book. It's almost comic book in a way, isn't it? And it's those drawings, but they're quick, easy drawings. But so therefore, when you're actually filming it, you've got a concept of where you're going to go, isn't it? So it's almost like a comic, I suppose.
In some places, though, I had a few friends who would say, "Oh, Paul's had his wide-angle pen out," because I'd actually, in learning how lenses worked, you would actually draw with the lens in mind. So if it was a long lens or a wide-angle lens, all of a sudden my pen and my scene would change. So all of a sudden the horizon, I had a big bow in it because I wanted a wide-angle lens. And of course, directors And DOPs don't quite like you telling them what lens you want to
yeah.
use. But anyway, it was a bit of fun we had over the years.
Yeah.
I kept doing that all the way through those 30, 40 years nearly. So sort of the wide angle lens and film.
Yeah.
It's a good storyboards.
And then all of a sudden you discovered, because of COVID, the city that you live in.
Look, Melbourne was interesting. I had a friend who kept on saying, Paul, get your head out of Sicily and Italy and get back to Melbourne.
Which some beautiful architecture.
Which is just, it's one of those things. You go, right, my own town. Yes, I need to. You know what's there. You know that Burke Wills is sitting there as a big bronze in the middle of the square. You know that there's Melbourne University is full of these buildings that were pulled down at various times and rebuilt on their land as a facade even. You rediscover your own town by going out there the way I did. And sometimes I'd go, right, okay, well, I can't draw the Princess Theatre. There's about a dozen trucks in front of it, or there's a crowd of people there. So all of a sudden, in the middle of winter when the trees are bare and it's cold as all hell, you're out there doing the initial drawing, as I call it, not the kitchen table, the initial drawing on location, where you can actually focus, no one's around you. The enemy, of course, is rain, because you've got ink.
Yes, and paper.
All of a sudden it becomes a watercolour instead of a pen and ink drawing. So there's all those challenges, but you actually, again, discover things, and then you want to record it. So, all of a sudden the ironwork on the Parliament House was important, so I drew that,
And, the one with the Princess Theatre, you've actually got the
Parliament House
lights in the foreground.
I went back to the steps of Parliament and looked back over there.
Yep.
And then when I was over there, I looked on top of the old... the restaurant, the Waiters Club, I think it's called, or whatever, and there was a rooftop there. So later on, about the end of the year, I went there and asked permission to go on the roof, because from the roof I get a view of Parliament, uninterrupted by anything. Yep. Except for the trees. So you wait for winter again. So you're cold on the rooftop of Melbourne, drawing, sketching. Yeah. So, Melbourne, I rediscovered Melbourne during that time, and I think it was all about that. So,
but hold on, the sketchbook changed.
Yes, my sketchbook
What happens
changed.
with the sketchbook when you're in Melbourne?
So, travelling sketchbooks, A4 size, and then a smaller A5 sketchbook I would take away travelling. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting there going, right, okay, I'm stuck in the studio at home. What will we do next? So all of a sudden, here I am with a portrait-sized sketchbook, big, lots of paper to put a lot of ink on. So the drawings doubled in their time and in their intensity. And I found it difficult during that time too to find that I couldn't go and sit in a spot. But then I was introduced in this time of COVID to what people now know as the drone shot. So here all of a sudden, architectural shots I had of Rome, no people in them because it's COVID, no flowers on the steps of the Spanish Steps. But then I started to say, okay, I need to get these guys and ask permission to use their photographs. So I did that, and then all of a sudden I started drawing a few scenes that were architectural, of course, in their nature, but say the Spanish Steps, no people on them. All of a sudden it looked like a model rather than, a real
thing.
thing. So I sometimes would put a person in place, show proportions, all those sort of things. So this became sort of a way of me sitting and continuing my travel story, but without going to the locations. But it also introduced me, as I said, to the overhead view of a city, because as a drawer and storyboard artist, you were doing that in your head. You were doing your bird's view from your head, knowing what the plan of the place is. And that goes back to my art school days when I used to do drafting. In drafting, you do the plan, you do an elevation, then you do the 3D drawing on the one piece of paper. That was the way you worked. Yep. So doing this in your head, all of a sudden I had some aids called the drone photograph.
Right,
The
fantastic.
villages in Sicily,
Yeah.
the villages in Rome, like all around the world. I all of a sudden I was blessed with this supply of stimulus,
Yeah.
really, and material. So that went into this sketchbook, a big one which has lots of drawings on it.
Whoa!
So interiors of some of the churches, as you can see here.
Wow!
So I got, again, almost this reference material off the people that were putting these in their Instagram feeds. And
Yep.
that's the relationship I've had with a lot of them. They come from the Instagram feeds.
Fantastic.
You know, a fountain in the middle of a square in Sicily.
Yeah.
Like, again, because the photographer's already blessed with his eye or her eye, I don't have to do a lot of work or, in the sense of my own perception of whatever the scene is.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, that's
So
where I've gone to.
What do you exhibit very often?
When I got back from Sicily 2011, I did one down at Gasworks, which was a joint one with my wife, who happens to be a jeweller. Janet displayed her jewellery in the middle of the space because, again, we did the trip to Sicily together. And so all her pieces that she collected and worked on, when I say collected, we collected bits of glass on the beach and made jewellery into it, or a bit of ceramic that was washed up on the shore in Sicily.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it became a brooch. So that went in the middle cabinet, and I had my drawings around the outside. So it was our journey, really, from that. So that was and I was saying, my mother was saying, Paul, you must have an exhibition. I'm getting old now. And so that was really my gift to my mother at the time, because she was the one that fiddled with a bit of drawing and painting.
Yep.
Beautiful work.
Yep.
And so we had that exhibition, which was really the go-to one, because I took all that work from a sketchbook this size.
Yep.
So sketchbook this size, and then had to redraw those scenes larger.
Yep.
For exhibition. So all of a sudden, for almost a year, I'm just drawing, just on new sheets of paper with
Yep.
ink.
And
so,
you enjoyed it?
I did. It also allowed me to sort of look at the subject matter of whatever I was drawing, the location, or whether it was inside a church, and do a little bit more art history swap.
Yep.
Just history.
Yep.
So. Absorbing.
Now, also over my shoulder, I think it's this shoulder here, is the Flinders Street station, and it's a little bit more stretched than normal. Why is it in that respect?
Well, it's interesting because I've had commissions over the last 10 years, and some of them have been like, my sisters got married in Verona. I need a sketch for their first wedding anniversary paper. Okay, so pen and paper drawing. Here I am free to do what they send me photographs, poor photographs of their family wedding, and then all of a sudden I'm looking to try and give them something more permanent. So I sort of went back to do that. So the Melbourne sketch there was for Shane O'Neill, actually, is a worldwide skateboarder, and Shane was in LA, and he comes from Melbourne. He knew my stepson really well, skated together for years as kids, and so he commissioned me to do 2 drawings, one of Tokyo and one of Melbourne, one for himself and one for his partner in crime. They call themselves April Skateboard. Putting another name in for it, dropping another name. And they had a skateboard company, and they were starting off, and these were 2, and they let me do what I wanted to do. I even cross-hatched their logo in pen and ink, so the whole board ended up being just pen and ink, black ink. So
that was skateboards.
One whiteboard.
Wow.
2 skateboards.
Wow.
One for Tokyo and one for Melbourne.
Whoa.
So that went really well, and a nice commission.
Yeah. A lovely commission.
Yeah. We like to get commissions.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on what you're doing. You've got to do a new exhibition. You've got to.
Yeah.
Are you working towards it?
I did the big Melbourne one with Marie Cootie. Marie gave me the space to use upstairs, which was perfect for an old Victorian rooms. That sits well with my pen and ink drawings.
Yep, yep.
And that went really well. I did some talks in the round table up there. I think that sort of gallery space where you can actually pass on and be there, attend, don't just have it on the wall.
Yep.
Try and be there in the space during
I totally
the time.
agree. Yep.
And share the stories with the people that come to look at the work.
Yeah.
So
Well, you've got to do another one. You've got to do another
we
one.
will be. Thank you,
you will
David.
be. Paul, thank you so much for coming in and sharing with props and all that as well. Your work is spectacular, and I congratulate you on how wonderful it is.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching The Art Hunter. I'm David Hunt, and we'll see you again next week. See ya.